Hi friends, Miss Frias here to read a couple more chapters in the chapter book that we've been following along, The Wild Robot. If you guys remember, the last time that we left off, our wild robot Roz was getting chased by a couple of bears, so let's find out what happens. Chapter 15, The Escape. Using all the strength in her legs, Roz jumped straight up, high into the air, and landed on a tree branch overhead. The tree shook with the sudden weight of the robot, and then thunk, thunk. Two pine cones bounced off Roz, and a moment later, thunk, thunk. The same pine cones bounced off the bears below. The bears grunted with annoyance. This gave Roz an idea. The robot's programming stopped her from being violent, but nothing stopped her from being annoying. So Roz plucked pine cones from the nearby branches and lobbed them down at the bears. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Each pine cone bounced off its target with annoying accuracy and whipped the young bears into a frenzy. That's Roz with her pine cones and the bears underneath. Roar, said Sister Bear. Grrr, said Brother Bear. I do not understand you, bears, said the robot. Roz was about to unload a whole armful of annoying pine cones when a distant roar echoed through the forest. Back at the cave, Mother Bear was calling for these two, and she did not sound happy. The young bears looked at each other. They knew they were in trouble, but before lumbering home, they glared up at Roz one last time. More than anything, they wanted to get that robot. Chapter 16, The Pine Tree. Roz was in no hurry to leave the tree. She stayed on her branch long after the bears had gone, enjoying some peace and looking herself over. In addition to bite marks and claw marks, the robot was also covered in dirt, which of course meant it was time for another cleaning. She was making good progress when she felt something sticky on her arm. The problem with sitting in a pine tree is that eventually the tree's sticky resin will find you. It always does. And it found Roz. The robot scrubbed and scraped at the resin, and soon her fingers were completely coated in sticky stuff. Then it was all over her arms and her legs and her torso. Things were about to get even messier. A robin swooped into the tree and began screeching and fluttering around Roz. The bird had recently finished building herself a new nest. It was a little work of art, a delicate basket woven from grass and twigs and feathers, and it was right above the robot's head. Screech! Screech! Said the robin. That robin right there does not look happy. The robin continued screeching and fluttering, and then splat! She splattered her droppings across the robot's face. This bird was serious. So Roz scooted away and farther out on the branch until she heard a quick, sharp crack. Before Roz knew what was happening, the tree branch snapped under her weight and she went crashing to the forest floor. She hit the ground hard and lay there as broken branches and pine cones and needles showered on top of her. There was another splat. Then quiet returned to the forest. Chapter 17, The Camouflaged Insect. Roz was a mess. She lay under the tree, covered in a heap of broken branches and pine cones and needles. She still hadn't removed the sticky resin from her body, and then there were the bird droppings. She was about to get up and give herself a rigorous cleaning when she noticed a particular twig. The twig was moving. It was crawling along the broken branches on the ground. With a gentle touch, the robot picked up the twig. Hello, stick insect. My name is Roz. You are very well camouflaged. The stick insect's body was long and thin, and he had the same shape and colors and markings as a real twig. But if you look closely, you just might see two tiny eyes and two spindly antennae, The insect didn't make a sound. He sat perfectly still as the robot. The two of them sat still and silently and stared at each other for a while. "Thank you, stick insect," said Roz as she placed him back where she found him. "You have taught me an important lesson. I can see how camouflage helps you to survive. Perhaps it could help me to survive as well." Chapter 8. The Camouflaged Robot. As you know, reader, Roz had always liked to keep herself as clean as possible. But her desire to stay alive was stronger than her desire to stay clean, and our robot decided it was time she got dirty. Roz was going to camouflage herself. She had gotten the idea from the stick insect, but Roz quickly realized that camouflaging herself as a twig was out of the question. No, the robot would have to blend into the landscape itself. She began by smearing handfuls of thick mud over her entire body. Then she plucked ferns and grasses from the ground and sank their roots into her new muddy coating. She placed colorful flowers around her face to disguise her glowing eyes, and any bare patches were covered with tree leaves and strips of moss. Our robot now looked like a great tuft of plants walking through the forest. She waited for darkness, and then she padded into the center of the clearing and nestled herself between some rocks, and became part of the landscape. Look at our camouflaged robot. A few hours later, the sky was brightening, the fog was lifting, the nighttime animals were slinking home, and the daytime animals were beginning to stir. It was just an ordinary morning on the island. However, there was that new tuft of plants on the forest clearing. Only the bees noticed the tuft. They buzzed around it, completely unaware that the robot was hidden beneath. And so Roz sat there, right in the open, yet completely unseen, and observed the wilderness around her. She watched flowers slowly turn towards the sun. She listened to rodents crawl through the weeds. She smelled the moist, piney air. She felt worms wiggle against her muddy sides. A week later, the tuft of plants was gone, but there was a new clump of seaweed on the shore. A week after that, the clump of seaweed was gone, but there was a new bramble on the mountain. Then there was a new log on the river bank, then a new rock in the forest. Chapter 19. The Observations. Clouds scudded through the sky. Spiders spun intricate webs. Berries beckoned to hungry mouths. Foxes stalked hares. Mushrooms rose up from the leaf litter. Turtles plopped into ponds. Moss spread across tree roots. Vultures hunched over carcasses. Ocean waves beat against the coastline. Tadpoles became frogs. Caterpillars became butterflies. A camouflaged robot observed it all. Pretty cool that our friend Roz was able to camouflage herself and see all of the things, all of the life happening on the island. Next time, we'll read more on the wild robot and figure out what a camouflaged Roz does next. Bye, guys.